Welcome to Please Me. This podcast is intended for mature audiences. Eve is a licensed physical therapist who treats conditions that relate to sexual health. Please sit back and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome to another sexy episode of Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. I hope you were able to listen to the last episode, which was episode number 20, and the last episode of season 1. I was so excited to reach the end of the season and just recap on all the incredible information that I had learned along the way. It was so much fun to reflect on the podcast and look at the direction I was moving and trying to gauge what direction I wanted to go in moving forward. I started off the podcast as a solo host, talking about different topics that I find important and really encouraging communication as part of the holy grail, in my opinion, of any relationship. By relationships, I don't specifically mean a committed relationship, but any relationship that you find yourself in, whether it be a friend you just met and want to get to know more about, or a person that you've been married to for 20 plus years, and really everything in between. I found myself moving in the direction of having more interviews, and each interview for me was like a little gem. I found myself just having this incredible connection with each guest and having either these incredible aha moments of growth and healing for myself, which was unexpected, but also forming these incredible girl crushes with some of my guests along the way. And I am sure that today will be no different because I have an incredible guest today to introduce to you. Without further ado, I want to welcome Mizzy Bender on the show today as my very first guest of season 2. Mizzy started her journey into being a boss lady as the host of Mind Bender events, and later branched into creating a very sexy online and traveling boutique. She also is the host of the podcast called The Mizzy Bender Show, an adult podcast, and I can't wait to hear all about it. So, without further ado, as I said before, I want to introduce Mizzy Bender. Hey, Mizzy, and thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Me too. I want to know all about how you got started with your events business. So can we go into some details? Tell me about what types of events you host. And I know that you travel around the country, so I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story. So the events that we host are adult swinger lifestyle events. I don't really like to capture it just under the swinger bracket because I think that as time's going on, it's starting to grow into a lot of different territories. So maybe like the overall lifestyle bracket, which is like poly and you know, those that really don't want to say they're swingers but are participating in threesomes, or maybe you're a unicorn and you're trying to find where you belong. So our events really capture every area of the swingers world in the adult industry, and I became part of it like 5 years ago. I met my partner who I'm with now, and he actually developed Mind Bender parties. It started out for him when he was a youngster, like early 20s, like right of age, and really getting into that party mentality. They started out as raves. And as time went on, he realized that the swingers world didn't really have that party atmosphere. It was just really the sexual tone to it. So he developed this entire production where it is swinger and party. So when we set up our parties, we set up a complete kink dungeon, we set up open and private play spaces, as well as sexy areas across the club with shadow boxes and stripper poles and just different things to be able to kind of just get like frisky and sexy on one another. So when I met him, I was married at the time. Truthfully, it was a really crazy situation. I was kind of on my exit plan from my marriage. Unfortunately, it was just not a very healthy situation for me, but I did have a stepson that I was trying to get to graduation. I met my stepson when he was 2.5 and was his primary parent. So I was really dedicated to making sure that he can really take care of himself and put himself in a position where he would be successful in life. And so my husband at the time was a crazy alcoholic. He had PTSD from war. So it was a really challenging home life. And in this time period, 5 years ago, when I met my now partner, my aunt had taken me to a meet and greet. Although she didn't tell me that she was taking me to a swingers meet and greet, she just told me we were going to a party. And so that's kind of how I got introduced to this, where she took me this one night when I was in super turmoil in my relationship at home and was having a really tough night. She was like, just get dressed. I'm going to come pick you up and we're going to go out. And of course, I had no intentions of going out to pursue another person or anything of the sorts. I was just going to have fun with my aunt. And later on throughout the night, I had realized where I was because somebody had propositioned me to be in a threesome with her and her husband. And I was like, whoa, what is going on here? And so when I started to get briefed about where I was and what was going on, I was like, Auntie, what in the world is happening here? Like, why would you take me to this? But recognizing that my partner happened to be, well, I guess at the time it was my aunt's like good friend. So she was like, we're just here to support him and like whatever, we're just out having fun. And so I was like, okay, I get it. And so I met her friends, which happens to be my partner now, briefly that night. And there was something about his energy that was so captivating and so lovely and so far different than what my life experiences were currently and what I was going through for most of my marriage. And for a split second, there was this moment of like, wow, life doesn't have to be this difficult. Life can be fun. Life can be light. Life can be all these exhilarating things and not necessarily even having to do with the swingers world. Just in that moment, feeling like energized by everybody around me because they were so happy and just free was like a different feeling for me. And over that like week after that party had ended, that my now partner found me on social media and we started to have a really good connection. And it was that crossroads of like, whoa, what's going on here? Because of course I never imagined leaving my husband for a new situation, but I also knew I was on my timelines of like trying to get out of my marriage also. And it just so happened that all the timing kind of worked that I took my stepson for his road test and he passed his road test on August 2nd. And I moved out that same exact day and started, kind of trying to create this new, fresh life for me. And I kind of knew at that point in time he can drive himself. He didn't need to have, that caretaker 24/7. So I moved a couple blocks down the road so I can kind of take care of him from afar. Unfortunately, things didn't work out that way, and it became a really challenging, difficult road ahead after that. But for me personally, I was able to really dive into what this adult world looked like and what did that mean for me? Because I didn't even know that this existed before this current time period that I'm talking about. And so there was a lot for me to understand, and there was a lot for me to try and wrap my head around. The first part of it was being integrated into mind bender parties, because clearly, if I was going to have this relationship with him, I needed to be on board with what his business was. And this was his passion point. So I was trying to figure out what everything looked like all at one time, like personally, business wise, and whatever. And it was a lot. It was definitely a huge learning, but one of the best of my life. And so that's kind of like how I got to the beginning part of this. And I'll
Okay.
ask if I should continue or not.
It's interesting because we have a lot of similarities in that, about 6 years ago myself, I got divorced and started really like exploring other relationships. And through exploration, I found my way into an open lifestyle mentality. and just learning, the ins and outs of that. And it's been such an incredible journey of exploration and, love, really, and loving myself and being able to share that with other people. So it's interesting that we have that commonality. And also, you mentioned that your aunt, brought you to this party, which I find amazing. I have three adult nieces, and this podcast, the thought of the podcast really, um, for me was an exercise in helping them and other women that I know who, don't, are not communicating well in relationships, or that need help and guidance, and I'm happy to say that all three of my nieces listen to my
Mm.
podcast. And I feel like, they gain value from it. It may not be everything, all of the things that I'm talking about is relatable to them, but certainly they are getting something out of it. So I think that that is so amazing that your aunt brought you into this experience, and now here you are exploring, all of these relationship options, so I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I have to say I am really thankful to her. And she's not that much older than I. I think that maybe 7 years of an age difference. So we were always very close and we always did like really wild and extreme things together. And I always trusted her so much, you know what I mean? And so to go into this direction in life, I'm glad that it was an introduction by her because I feel like safe and secure over how it all transpired. And I'm not saying that negatively to anybody on their journeys, just for me in particular, how it all happened so organically and natural. I couldn't have asked for anything more because it did open up my mind to have to just really just think about my own self. Since it was a new learning for me, I needed to kind of take a step back and figure out how to absorb it all without somebody forcing it down my throat. Because sometimes, in this world of ours, you do have the partnerships that, one is more into it over the other person. And there is that forceful, almost kind of talk or feeling of, oh, I must do something because my partner wants me to do it. This wholeheartedly was me actively making my own choice for my own human self, which felt very freeing and really wonderful at the time because not only did I have the difficulties with my marriage and stuff, my ex-husband was so insecure that I wasn't allowed to wear tank tops. I wasn't allowed to use tampons. I wasn't allowed to wear thongs. I wasn't allowed to wear two-piece bathing suits. I wasn't allowed to dress a certain way in front of my stepson because what images am I putting in his head? And these were all things that I felt to be so extreme and so inappropriate and so controlling and so confusing for me as a woman because to this day, even though it's been 5 years that I've been away from it, I still question whether or not my behaviors in everyday life are right or wrong because of what was ingrained in me during my marriage. But now I live in this lifestyle where I am so free. And you know what? If I want to be naked today, I can because I say so. And nobody else is telling me yes or no. So, from a female empowerment standpoint, yes, although maybe not everything is for your nieces, the mere fact of the statement of, it's your body, your control, you get to choose and don't let anybody dictate otherwise, I think is a really strong message to keep relaying because we get very, I don't know if it's confused or skewed real quick as females and try and adapt really hard onto our partner and what our partner wants from us. And I think to keep the messaging of like stay strong in your individuality and who you are and don't question that for anything and don't make any choices in life until you are fully committed and comfortable in your own self with it is a really beautiful thing.
I absolutely agree. I think it's so important to have that voice in any relationship. And also to, like, when things aren't going well, to really think about how you're making excuses for the other person or trying to minimize what the other person is asking you to do, and trying to make sense of it in your mind so that you can do the things that they're asking of you, even though maybe those things are against what you would personally do for yourself, and in a relationship, it's give and take, and it's not always that everything is going to be exactly your thought process and that you agree with things. And we as women, we tend to give
Mhm.
so much of ourselves, sometimes too much of ourselves. We give all of that autonomy away, because you had a controlling ex-husband. You gave your autonomy away so that you wouldn't make waves.
Yep.
And really, when you think about relationships, you are two autonomous people choosing to be together,
Mhm.
and so if you allow all of your autonomy to be taken away, you're losing a piece of yourself. So
Yeah.
it's amazing that you've been able to kind of do like a 180, where you're in a relationship now that's almost completely the opposite of what the relationship was in that you were married to.
Mhm.
And that's incredible that you made such a quick turnaround. I was listening in on your podcasts for prepping the show today, and I heard a wide variety of guests on your show, and they were talking about their life's journey. And I love how you just revel in people's life's journeys, and you get them to really talk about and dig into their life experiences. Obviously, your marriage was a huge life experience that brought you to where you are today. Is there anything else that you would say brought you to where you are today besides that,
Yeah.
experience of your marriage?
Oh my God. Truthfully, my whole journey in the lifestyle is one of those experiences. So I'll give you two separate examples on why I feel that way. So we talked about my men parties and how I got in there. Mizzy's boutique is my adult novelty boutique, and it is an online shop, but it also is a traveling vendor at different lifestyle events wherever. That came about because so in this time period when I met my partner and I was coming into this world, at the same time, my corporate job, I worked in a very prestigious company, very high maintenance role, multi-billion dollar international company, and I wore a lot of different hats. My main job responsibility was supporting the CEO of this company, as well as the CMO, the CFO, and the president of North America, all of our marketing team, way down into digital and sales. I mean, pretty much like my position tapped into everything on top of CSR, corporate social responsibility work, and project donations and everything. So I was pretty well versed in the business world and have a lot of experience. So as this time period was happening, my company was actually in the process of moving corporate headquarters. And it was something that was happening for quite some time, but we were almost near the end of the transition and all the pieces that needed to go into it. And I knew that eventually my job position was going to be eliminated if I didn't make the option to move with the corporate office, because clearly all of my bosses needed me on site. So I was not moving. So by the time it was for the transition to happen, they did eliminate me from the organization, but they gave me 6 months severance, which is extremely unheard of in a lot of areas. And I felt extremely grateful at that time because I legit had just moved out and I was, completely supporting myself. And I felt very grateful that they gave me a lot of time to be able to almost like mourn, grieve, do whatever I need to do. Because my grandmother also passed away at that time too. So I had a lot going on. And when that exit happened, my now partner said, I really would love for you to work on Mind Bender parties full time. Now, here I am, so used to working at rapid speed, 100 million projects at one time. I mean, and I worked almost around the clock. I was like connected 24/7. So I'm like, am I going to be able to transition out of this crazy corporate job into only doing events? So I said, you know what? Let me give it 3 months. If after 3 months, I don't think it's a viable thing for me, I still have 3 months to look for a job and get me to where I needed to be. Well, as time was going on, everything was working out really smooth. The events business was picking up, and I felt really happy with what I was doing. So I just rolled along the punches with my men parties and did not look for a job at all. Come the end of the year, I started to receive letters from New York State about my unemployment that, or maybe it was like the beginning of January. And now this is the year going into COVID. Okay. I received the letters for unemployment from New York State, and they said, it's time to qualify, whatever. A couple weeks went by and I pushed it off and I pushed it off. And I didn't want to apply because I felt selfish, honestly, is how I felt. I felt like I just was really lucky with all the severance that they gave me. I didn't want to be like, I just didn't want to feel like I was taking, you know what I mean? And so my partner was like, what's the worst that happens? Like, go down there, see what they're offering. Maybe they have job placement, just like go sort it out. So I went. And at that interview, the woman told me because of my job qualifications, I am able to apply for the SEAT program. And the SEAT program is a New York State funded program where they extend your unemployment for 16 weeks for you to open up your own business under New York State. And there was a
Wow.
lot of qualifications. You needed to write your business plan. You needed to have a marketing plan. You needed to check in with them weekly and provide all this shit that they wanted. And like I felt like I was going to college, truthfully, on like
Mhm.
everything that they wanted. So they were like, if you qualify, if you fill out the application, you qualify, that's what your next steps will be. So I felt really comfortable with that because I said, oh, I'm going to be working for now all these dollars. And so they didn't fund anything that you needed to do to create your business. They just did the extension of the unemployment. And I received my acceptance letter the week before COVID started. And the whole thing's real crazy. So what the business was Mizzy's boutique that I created, LGBTQ community, women owned business in a niche market that was super, right there, hit every single little category that I needed to from my diversity standpoint. And when I got the approval letter, I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic. So I was like, here we go. Now we're going to create a boutique. And originally, the boutique started as strictly swingers merchandise because during this time period and when I was trying to figure out what I was going to be doing for my business, I started doing some market research within the swingers world. And a lot of it came about that there was no merchandise and that they needed swag. And the upside down pineapple started to become super popular at that time. So I said, perfect. I'm going to start making swag with upside down pineapple stuff on it and, start my business. So that is exactly what I did. I created my whole everything. It started as an Etsy store, and then it is now officially on my own Mizzy's Boutique website. But then during COVID, I also figured out how to make it a traveling boutique because a lot of the surrounding states were green territories, especially when you got into deep PA. You were allowed to be outside because of however many acres and everything that there was going on. So I figured out how to take the boutique on the road and establish the entire everything from start to finish with that bad boy. And I'm so goddamn proud of it too, because I did not know one thing about like retail marketing or e-commerce or anything. Not that wasn't my strong suit. I did have some um, education or background work in some regard because I did do little pieces of that at my corporate job, but not enough for me to be like, oh, I feel really qualified for this. So it was a lot of work, but I'm really proud of that. So I would say that was the second monumental thing that happened because had New York State not provided me with that opportunity, I definitely would not have the boutique because I wouldn't have been forced into having to do something like that. Or maybe I would not have thought to do something like that had that not happened. So that's number
Wow.
two. Yeah.
That's
Do you want me to go
amazing.
on to number
And
three? What?
yes, yes. Yeah, let's hear number three. Absolutely.
So number three was how the podcast got developed. And the podcast got developed because, as I mentioned, COVID had kind of just started throughout this time. And we were supposed to, as Mind Bender Parties, host our shenanigans. What the heck is it called? Shamrocks and Shenanigans event. We were supposed to travel up to Philadelphia and host up there, but we didn't officially go down in lockdown at this time yet in New York, but there was a lot of buzz about it. And so on Thursday before the Saturday that we were supposed to have the event, we canceled the event and said until further notice, Mind Bender Parties will not be hosting in-person events until we understand what's going on in the world. So we decided to host an online Saturday Night Live from our living room. And it went over so well because by that point in time, the world did shut down and things were starting to get really, really crazy that so many people that Saturday night funneled through. And I mean, we talked about all sorts of stuff. Like, I mean, we had our living room set up as if we were at the event. So we were charismatically trying to engage people by drinking games and, all sorts of fun stuff. But we also were having really serious conversation also. And we stayed on for hours. So by the time Sunday, Monday came, the amount of feedback that we received about just being there and having an outlet and just feeling people feeling appreciative that they were able to just voice whatever they were feeling at that moment in time. It was like a very humbling, overwhelming point in time because I think that that's when I started to realize that people were really, really going to be in distress over this. So through conversation, I ended up going on Facebook Live like the next, like maybe Tuesday or Wednesday or something like that. And I stayed on Facebook Live for like 10 hours. It was like some extreme number of hours. And
Wow.
in that time, we developed as a community Mornings with Mizzy. So with Mizzy started that Thursday and ran every single day from 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. all through COVID. And
Wow.
I put together a show and we had conversation, discussion, and it was lifestyle oriented education pieces, but also free opportunity for people to express how they were feeling on that particular day and to get the support that they needed to be able to get their day started not feeling alone and then gradually work into like whatever we had going on for the day. So that eventually has migrated into what the podcast is and it organically just, that's what it's just what it was. I never woke up one day and said I was going to be a podcaster, but here I am.
Wow. Yeah. It sounds like COVID really changed. I mean, it changed everybody's lives in a lot of, sometimes a lot of negative ways. Obviously, a lot of people lost family members and all of that. But it's so nice and refreshing to hear like positive stories of that time too, because, you were given that opportunity to, build a business and also given sort of like a blueprint for how to build a business so that you would be successful. And then, as a support system for yourself, probably too, and also the community that you love so much, you put it out there into the world and was giving so much of yourself. And then out of that came like your podcast. So I think that's so amazing. And I've listened to quite a few of your shows. And it almost sounds to me like you have guests on the show and you sort of really talk about different things, but it sort of like organically flows your conversations with your guests. It doesn't sound like you plan too much. I'm just the opposite. I like plan everything, right? So, so it's almost like a verbal diary or journal.
Mhm.
Sometimes it sounds like
Yeah.
you're talking about what you did for the weekend and like the you talk about the events that you just hosted or whatever it is, and almost like you're traveling and some parts of it and you're still
Mhm.
doing it anyway. It's like you're hardcore, like no matter what, thick or thin, rain or shine, you're going to be on the podcast. And I think that that's admirable.
Thank
Do
you.
you I love the idea of having like a verbal diary or journal and you're sharing it with the world. Do you also journal, and if so, what do you gain from that?
I do journal. So, interestingly enough, and maybe this might not be a fan favorite, but I'm super into oracle cards. So, they're similar to tarot cards, but oracle cards are on the lighter side of things. And so in the morning, I'll pull 5 cards and I'll journal to those cards. And for me, it's kind of just set my intentions for the day. For those that, understand and are interested in it, when you have a feeling and sensation inside of you, and then your cards read what you're feeling, it's almost validation of where you're at. So my journal is a lot, it's a lot of almost reassuring myself from a business side of things. It's like I do journal about like personal things that go on in my life, but it's almost like I'm talking strategy to myself and talking out like where I'm trying to get within my businesses and what I really need to do to get there, as well as like what my insecurities are and like what's jamming me up. And then I always end it with affirmations to try and make sure that I'm ending it on like such a positive, powerful note that like I can accomplish all these different things. So I do really try and journal every morning. And I mean, I've slacked a little bit as of lately, and it's kind of strange because I know when I slack a little bit is when I need to get in there so much more, because then I think that my brain is going too much and I need to settle it down some. But I am a huge, huge believer in journaling, and I do agree that all of this stuff is like my own visual diary of like what's gone on, and I am extremely grateful every single day that the universe lined up my cards the way that they did, no pun intended, to be able to be sitting where I am today, because it is a really interesting way that everything came about. It's like I prayed per se in my journals during my marriage. I would write about this life that I'm living right now. Like I
Wow.
would dream of all of this down to how my relationship is, even even this weird like thing that I have with what I got going on with my whole influencer thing. To a certain degree, like I did journal about this, so I think that it's a really powerful tool of manifestation. So keep on doing it if you guys do journal.
I was just about to say, and you took the words out of my mouth, that you really manifested the life that you are living now just by journaling. And words are so powerful. And I really always encourage people to like think about the words that they're about to say. Don't just like have verbal diarrhea, because that can get you into some trouble and it can really turn people off in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Thinking about what you're going to say and saying what you're going to say in a way that, is transformative, and really those words transform your life, So I find that so interesting. Um, you talked about, in another one of the podcasts, you talked about plant medicine in one of your shows, and maybe in multiple shows. I didn't hear them all because there's so many of them, but I, think it's really, now that medical marijuana is sort of legal pretty much everywhere you go, it's amazing how many conditions it's really applicable for. Anxiety, depression, insomnia, pain. I am a physical therapist, and I often tell my patients, to use it topically, with in creams for pain relief. How is it that you view medical marijuana as, or any other plant medicine, as a transformative um, thing to take in order to sort of open up or accentuate your intimate life?
So I think so too. I smoke marijuana like it's my job, and I microdose mushrooms. So
Okay.
smoking for me, I mean, I think that smoking enhances any orgasm, but I mean, that's just my opinion. I think that it allows your body to be so calm, and you're allowed to tune in and hone in on those sensations and different feelings that you have going on. So if you really allow your body to relax, you'll be able to receive so much more from a sexual standpoint. And I think that that's really powerful, letting your guard down and being so free that you're able to accept all that sexual energy and like really feel your pleasures. I think sometimes as females, we get scared and we sort of hold ourselves back to a certain degree, especially those that are afraid to squirt or, unsure of these things that, we were taught are taboo type things for us. If you just allow your guard down and just know that, sexual activity it was put on this earth for a reason. We should be embracing it and exploring and figuring out all of those things. So, yes, I would smoke a little. I smoke a lot because it does ease like my anxiety and it does help me sleep and it does tone my brain down because I have the tendency to have like 9,000 different tabs open at one time. So for me, it does really help soothe and calm my body. So in that regard, I totally support it and say, yes, give it a smoke, let your body be free, and just really embrace every sensation that you can feel. The plant-based for the mushrooms now, I could go one or two ways. I microdose, and the microdose just keeps me at a very easy feeling in life, like very I don't want to say slow because that's not right the right way, but that's how it feels almost. Like I feel just very at ease. I don't feel fucked up. I don't feel like loopy or anything of the sorts. It's almost like a similar high that I get from smoking. So they're very balanced. But if I eat a little more mushroom than just the micro dosing, it does send me into a super sexual explosion. And I don't know if anybody, does ecstasy or not. I haven't in a really long time, but it does like have that same kind of feeling for me if I do eat a little bit too much. Not that I am, visually seeing things or I'm not tripping out or anything of the sorts. It's just the right amount for me to just be like really sexually charged. And I kind of like those moments too because I am able to go into almost like a trance kind of, like I'm able to just sit there and allow my body to be played with. I do like that. And everybody has their own sexual ways or whatever, but I could definitely sit there for a really long time and have my partner just do whatever he wanted to my body. And in those moments, like with like extended mushrooms and stuff like that, you really do feel so much more. And it's like exhilarating and it's overwhelming and it's very intense, but it's great. It's so satisfying.
I agree that, it can really heighten your senses. So I don't know. I personally love to, use the gummies. It helps me for sleeping. During COVID, that's when I really, started exploring. And not so much exploring. It was more like I need to get rid of this anxiety and
Mhm.
I need to sleep because I had horrible insomnia just from like worrying all of the time and, focusing on things that you shouldn't be focusing on. And it's just like the wheels are constantly turning, and then I noticed, as a bonus, that it really heightened the sensation when it came to sexual experiences, and, obviously that hooked me because I love sex already. And, add in like heightened experiences. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is
Mhm.
definitely something that is worth exploring. So I love that you are open about talking about that, because, a lot of times people, I know lots of people that often I'm like, oh, you use medical marijuana, you smoke, or however you use it. You can use tinctures, there's gummies, there's so
Mhm.
many ways to do it. You don't actually have to smoke it. And I'm sometimes surprised by, people that are actually, using it. And often it's not, sometimes it's like a family member that I'm surprised by, but often it's, you know, a patient that's like in their late 60s or 70s,
Mhm.
and they tell me how it's helped them and their pain or their migraines or whatever it may be, that it's really helped them. And so, I encourage people to experiment with it because it really is helpful for so many different conditions. Wouldn't you
Yes.
say?
100%. Yeah.
And it heightens your sexual experience. And our bodies we're built for pleasure, head to toe. We have so many different nerve endings that are, screaming for pleasure. And, when you accentuate that, it's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
so
I agree.
definitely we're on the same page with that when it comes to
Oh
that.
yeah, 100%. Definitely.
One of my podcasts in my first season was about relationship options. And I want to delve a little bit more into this topic. The more I realize that, love is an infinite thing, so are relationship options. And our lives and our relationships are only limited by, the limitations that we place on ourselves. You had some guests on your show who talked about introducing their friends who had like alternative relationship styles as a modern couple, and I love that concept because I really hate labels. And
Mhm.
really, I feel like some labels are derogatory or they just give me a bad feeling. You know what I mean? And I really don't like labels so much. But I do like the concept of being a modern couple or a modern thinking human, in the world of relationships. What does that mean to you? And how do you think your relationship um, is intertwined in this way with that concept?
So, I mean, I think that modern relationship was a really great way to explain it because I do agree that there's so many stigmas around the different classifications of relationships. And it's a lot of because people are just not educated and they just don't understand. So, when they introduce this modern thought process, I said, you know what, that is brilliant because that does mean, and it could mean anything at this point in time, but at least it gives you an idea that, all right, so you're not super old school. You have to have a little bit more open mind when you're dealing with this person or this couple, whatever. So I thought it was a great segue into opening up the line of communication on like, what does that mean and to be able to educate my relationship. I mean, we definitely are in the modern, world here. And our relationship, although yes, we're swingers, and going back to the whole label thing, I don't really like the labeling simply because everybody has their own ideas of what each one of these words means. So for you to be a swinger, does that mean that you have to go out to the club and bang every single weekend? Or can you just go, every 3 months and bang? Does that make you less or more? I don't really know. So putting this modern twist on it allows you to have whatever that is, and you don't need to go into any one of these areas. And for us, that works really well because we can have, I mean, we have a lot of MFMs. Um, we do have some threesomes with girls, more so with the guys though, and couple swapping and stuff. So we have so many different dynamics, but we can also have a long-term extended girlfriend too. So that leaves our relationship open to a lot of different compositions. So I would definitely feel much more comfortable introducing us as a modern couple because that means that we can go and sway any which direction we want to.
It really just does open up, I mean, it's like saying you're in an open relationship. It really is just a way to say that you're not stuck in the old school ways of how society is, putting upon us what we should be. And
Yep.
I love the idea of relationship anarchy and just throwing away all of those concepts that don't serve us.
Yeah.
So the idea of like being a modern couple, and when you think about, statistics, and I love statistics, and in one of my previous podcasts, I talked about the statistics of marriage and how 50 years ago, around 70% of adults were married. And now it's more in the 40 percentile. So
Mhm.
really modern relationships have changed and shifted so much,
Yeah.
in the last just 50 years, which is really not that long. So I love the concept of a modern relationship. And so I love that was something that I learned from listening to
Yeah,
one of
that I mean
your
that is fabulous.
podcasts.
I'm so thank you.
Yes. And also, another concept that, I hadn't really covered in any of my podcasts. And I want to talk to you about it because I think it's a super interesting concept. And I don't think it's a word that a lot of people know. So I want to bring up the concept here of compersion
Mhm.
and how it applies to alternative lifestyle seekers. I think it's a universal concept that all couples should strive towards, whether ethically monogamous or ethically non monogamous. And so, first, let me define it here. Compersion is our wholehearted participation in the happiness of others. It is the joy that we feel for someone else, even when their positive experience does not involve or benefit us directly. It is the opposite of jealousy or possessiveness. So, what is compersion for you? How does that relate specifically to your life and your relationships?
So I guess the best example would be, um, sometimes people can't understand how you can bring an extra person into your partnership, right? For me, when we have another female around and my partner is hugging her or kissing her, or who knows really what it is he's doing to her, that makes me happy. So a lot of times you'll see me like, from afar and I'll just be like smiling or just feel really happy knowing that he's feeling happy, knowing what she's feeling from him. It's kind of like a little cyclical cycle of like who's feeling what and how it's getting there on why my happiness is there. But it really is the true understanding and definition of watching your partner be very happy. And if that's a sexual standpoint or if it's just a cuddling standpoint, it works equally across the board for us. So I would say that that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah, and it's not just like their happiness, but it's you being happy for them.
Yeah, like
You know what I
feeling that
mean?
excitement. Hmm.
And it's the feeling that you get inside of you,
Hmm.
that warm and fuzzy feeling of feeling happy for someone else and
Hmm.
feeling, love towards that other person and happiness because they're experiencing something that is wonderful,
Yeah.
and being happy for them in that moment. And I think it's a concept that can happen for anything. I mean, it's not just a sexual idea, even though the idea of conversion did develop in a non-monogamous society. So I think it's interesting that that idea can really, coming from a non-monogamous place, can really go and move into all areas of relationships, because we should all be happy for our partners and what they're accomplishing in life, because really, everybody's on their separate path and we come together purposely because we choose to every day. And
Hmm.
if you're not coming together every day purposely and trying to keep that relationship alive, it's going to suffer. So,
Yeah.
so really having a specific idea of enjoying your partner's successes and their happiness, I think is such a nice, beautiful concept.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely 100%. It is, and it is a really beautiful feeling because when you get there, as you mentioned through the definition, there is no jealousy. There are no, and not that jealousy is bad, but I think that people misunderstand what jealousy is. I think for my own self, I personally feel like jealousy is developed from an underlying thing that's happening, like unresolved thing, maybe not necessarily really having to do with that particular subject, maybe something different. So by the time you get to this level, I feel like you've hit a part in your relationship where you have really great communication. You guys are able to flow and understand each other, in every single circumstance. Agree or not agree, you still support in whatever that may be. And you get to a really great understanding and foundation within your relationship, whether that's a friendship or whatever kind of relationship it is. It's just a really beautiful, freeing moment. So I do encourage everybody to try and find that feeling inside of them and practice it, because it is something that you need to practice and you need to understand it. And you need to self-reflect to understand what does it do to me and how do I get there and what's clouding it if I can't get there. So it's a really great exercise to try and understand and get yourself to.
I agree. And it is a skill that you can practice. It doesn't have to be in a sexual situation. It can be in any situation. Watching your partner give a speech and afterwards, they're so elated and happy that they did well and you're so happy for them. Any of those small little moments, it's a great time to really practice, because it's one of those things that is very binding in a relationship and that really all relationships should strive towards.
Yeah.
I love the concept of switching over to another concept here. I love the concept of BCE, or big clit energy, and really feeling that self confidence from within. What do you do to build your confidence? Particularly, I know when you're at an event, you may not always feel like you want to be in the party mood, and you have to kind of get that confidence and get that BCE flowing. What sorts of things do you do to get your BCE vibe on?
Oh my God. Honestly, it's not me. It's my team members around me. They know when I'm struggling, and that's when they jump in and they like really help me along. But I think, in some regard, I think I always have that quality in me though, because from my corporate job, there were times where you need to just put your hat on and it was like go time and it didn't really matter. So you need to figure out how to get that shit done. And, you needed to figure out if you were given this presentation, I mean, you got no choice. You need to stand there and do it. So I've really been in positions where I have had to just face it and you just turn it on for a second. And I have pulled that over into this world here because it's almost like an acting gig. You know what I mean? It's all of a sudden it's like go time because my person who I am at our events is very different than who I am here because I have a very different mindset going on. I'm watching the crowd, I'm watching what's happening, I'm trying to get a feel for what the community is at that moment in time to understand what the event is going to be like. There's so much happening that it's almost like, all right, I got my clipboard. Here we go. And that's that. So I don't really have that moment of like trying to pep talk me up. But in my down struggles, it's the team that really picks me up and really helps me. So it's having secure people that I feel really comfortable and safe with to reassure me that like I'm on my path.
It's amazing that you have that, for yourself and that others can encourage you along that path when you're having self doubt or whatever that may be. And sometimes that's just, your best friend, or maybe it's your partner that share some information with and they encourage you. And so it's nice that you have that, to that built in sort of encouragement, which is awesome.
Yeah, I am very
Just
lucky.
as, yes, yes, absolutely. Just as sex to me is our adult playground, sexual health is our right. And having, and I say that to say that, we should focus on our sexual health a lot more than we do. Just like we focus on, getting our teeth cleaned or getting that blood work taken and making sure that our blood levels stay, according to what they should be and our cholesterol's down and all of that good stuff. I feel like sexual health is our right. And I feel like a lot of people have a lot of shame around discussing sexual health and safe sex. I like to consider myself the face of safe sex, and having conversations about safe sex is a given in any mature interaction with any partner. How do conversations about safe sex play into your interactions with new potential partners, relationships, friendships?
It's interesting because we choose partners that are super intimate and close to us. It's very rare that the individual is someone that we don't know or anything. So our conversations go a little bit different. I think that this is a very personal kind of conversation because everybody views this topic differently. For us, if if it's a long-term play partner for us and we know exactly what our play partner is up to, we won't use condoms with them, but we also won't be banging anybody else either. So from a safety standpoint, depending on what we're doing, will be like who also gets brought into it. Um, you know, I don't know, maybe people might not even agree with our style in that manner. But of course, if it's just like people that like we hang out with occasionally, like we always use condoms and there's always that, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's like, you need to use one. But, at the same time, people get very confused on using condoms versus STDs and stuff like that. They think that if you use a condom, you're not going to get that. But yet you just forgot that you just blew the guy or you just ate her out. So one way or another, there's all these different things happening. So I think the topic goes on so many different directions, and it really comes down to like what you're super comfortable with as an individual, as a partner, and whomever the play partner is going to be. And at that regard, then you need to know exactly what you feel comfortable with. Do you want to see people's tests? Do you want to know how many other people they're banging? Do you want to know how frequently they're banging them? These are all questions that are not off limits. If you're going to have sex with somebody, then you're allowed to ask them whatever questions that you want pertaining to it. And if that play partner has an offense or a defense mechanism attached to it, then maybe they shouldn't be your play partner because they're not mature enough to have the conversation. But
Absolutely.
yeah, so I
Mhm.
mean, that we don't get into like the nitty gritties of it all with others though, because we don't really pick play partners that way.
Right, because you know your partners for a
Yeah,
while, and yeah, so you're looking for
yeah.
more of a connection. It really is very individual.
Mm.
I like to encourage people to have those conversations because I'm sure that, over the time that you've, been talking to your play partner, your new play partner, and you've been developing this relationship, this friendship, those conversations I'm sure have circulated in and out of your conversations,
Yeah.
and so getting to the place where you do know, what's going on with your partner if they're having, relationships with anybody else, and protecting yourself because you mentioned oral sex too. Oral sex is another way for STIs to be transmitted. So, if you're using a condom but then not using, protection for oral sex, you're kind of only giving yourself 50% protection,
Right.
and the other 50% you're like just throwing out the window and saying, "Oh, I don't care." But, we should care, if we care about our health.
Yes.
Um, so having those conversations I always feel is really empowering because a lot of people don't even feel comfortable saying, hey, wear a condom please, and this is why, when we talked about you know you being introduced by your aunt and me wanting to have this for like the younger generation, because I really feel like it's a very empowering thing to be able to put those boundaries up for yourself and say, I deserve to be safe
Hmm.
while I'm exploring my sexuality. And part of that is, using protection when you feel like you want to. And then there's always times where, like, you have really gotten to know the person that you're going to explore with. And you've probably already had that conversation, hopefully, about, maybe not using protection and what that would mean for you, if God forbid anything were to come up, you would already have a very close relationship where you would feel comfortable speaking to them about these sorts of things. So it's all of it is so important in terms of communication. Wouldn't you
I
agree?
agree. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. It is really important. And I don't want to downplay the importance of actually using protection because I mean it's super critical. And back to your point of others maybe not necessarily wanting to have the conversation. You still need to have the conversation if you're banging and like maybe the condom broke or you have it maybe it came off or you have some weird intuition that something strange happened. Like it's okay to pause and be like, I think that there's something wrong, either reapply or check it out or whatever it may be, because I hear a lot about that the next day where, people are not resentful, but they have some sort of tone to them because something went a little bit wrong. And so there's no point in time where the communication should stop. It's at any point in time you feel it necessary to bring it up and make sure it's a point for you without feeling like you can't, because it's never off limits. So that would be my only, input into that.
Absolutely. If something goes awry, the condom breaks, which happens quite often, I
Mhm.
mean, that's why I encourage people to change their condoms regularly because they wear out. I mean, it's a small, thin layer of latex, it can wear out very easily. And if you're not using enough lube, even more so, because then you're really kind of stretching it to its max. So
Right.
it's really, really important to have those conversations along the way if needed and
Mhm.
stopping at any point whenever you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because no matter what, no always means no. And no matter what, if ever you feel uncomfortable, you can stand up and you can, stop the situation and you can walk away. Or you can, begin a conversation about how you're feeling uncomfortable. So, it's really important. Communication is just so key for me.
Yeah. 100%. I definitely agree.
One more last question that I like to ask all of my guests if you have enough time. Are we doing
Yeah.
good on time? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So one more question that I like to ask my guests, and it's just for fun, and I hope that it's not too personal for you. But what is your hands down favorite sex position?
Oh, the favorite sex position. I'm gonna say I think it's like I call it the frog. I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but because I think the frog you have to be no, it is the frog. So if you picture like my feet together but behind me and like I'm propped up a little bit, it gives me just enough like leverage for my hips to be held and banged backwards, but also use my vibrator. So it gives me like all the sensations. That is my favorite.
So from behind, so you're laying down?
So I'm not really laying down. Picture this. Picture you start to kneel, you're kneeling
Yes.
and you just push your feet back just a little bit, but you open up your knees as if they're going to hit the corners of the room.
So
And
it's like a
so,
modified doggy style.
yes, yes, just with your knees down and like your feet actually touching like this, like right in
Ah,
between. So like
gotcha.
maybe my feet dangle like right by his balls, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's right. My feet are like right under his balls, and like he's like, right, yeah, that's definitely it.
So it's amazing that you mentioned that position because, and I've never heard it called the frog, but it's a modified doggy style position. And you mentioned that you could use your vibrator with it. And 95% of women need clitoral stimulation in order to orgasm. And so stimulating the clitoris is so important. And the fact that you're putting that together with penetration is exactly what I want to talk about on this podcast because there is such a thing as the orgasm gap, which I am always bringing up. Where women are down here with their orgasms in partner sex, and men are up here, and men are getting way more orgasms than us. And I think it should be equal.
Yeah.
And so trying to close that orgasm gap for yourself is so key. And the fact that you're doing the clitoral stimulation at the same time as you're getting penetrated, I think is double thumbs up.
Oh, it's dynamite. Oh, it's dynamite,
Yes.
all right.
So I want to be sure that my guests that are listening can find you and your store and your events. So please let them know where they can find you.
So you can find me on any social media platform under Mizzy Bender, or you can go to my website, which is just www.mizzybender.com. And it has everything on there and can connect you to all of our platforms.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Each week in season 2, I'm going to be giving a tip on what sorts of sexy products you might want to incorporate into your bedroom playground. So today I'm wearing a very sleek vibrator. I don't know if anybody's noticed it. Have you seen these before?
Yeah.
Yes. Are these something that you carry in your
No, but
store?
they are powerful little things.
They are tiny and super, super powerful. And I will be having this on pleaseme.online. So check out my website. I agree. These are so sleek, so powerful. And you know what? Like, so inconspicuous. You throw it on and you would never know that you're wearing a vibrator around your neck. So definitely a perfect little gift for Christmas or Hanukkah coming up or whatever holiday you celebrate. I want to thank you, Mizzy. I want to thank you for being here today and for joining me on this quest to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health. As a licensed physical therapist, I treat conditions such as erectile dysfunction in my practice, along with conditions such as incontinence, decreased vaginal sensitivity and dryness, and painful intercourse. I specialize in pelvic and sexual health, and I'm also a certified health coach. So I encourage you to reach out to me on pleaseme.online and send me a message if you can relate and you're ready to speak to somebody about the help that you need for those conditions. So please reach out on pleaseme.online. I also offer health coaching services, and I love that this can be virtual and I can reach anyone from anywhere in the world. This podcast has listeners on every continent, so don't be shy and say hi. There are so many reasons why people may seek help for their sexual health, and there is no shame in it at all. We are all deserving of love and of pleasure, and I encourage you to allow your sexual life to be an area of your life where you thrive and where transformation can occur. Thank you for joining me today on Please Me. Until next time. Visit pleaseme.online to reach Eve or for more information on products to increase blood flow and overall health, for her curated list of her favorite toys, and for swag that shows that you are a big fan. Please consider supporting the show.